Jean Hamilton-Fford, and I am in the room with Jillian Starman and Joanne Sprott. Both of them are my hosts as well. And together we will be interviewing each other and people in the future so that we can bring you some open space for reflection, honest conversation about what we carry, what we inherit, what we sense, and what becomes possible when we listen more deeply. And I don't want to waste too much time, but I would very, very much so. And Joanne, this is not a waste of time. This is something very important. Would you please briefly share with us who you are and what you do?
I'm Joanne Sprott, and I am an intuition mentor. I provide an open pathway to my clients' spiritual centers and an introduction to their intuitive guidance. And then they can take that and apply that to being more independent relationships, creating creative freedom to do their creative projects, and even focus on what they want to do for their life purpose or destiny in life.
Cool. Cool. Well, I will ask you more questions about that, but I'm not going to because Jillian's going to ask you more questions. And I just might butt in just for fun a bit later. Um, but for now, Jillian, I'll turn it over to you and we'll get started.
Thank you so much, Jean. So, Joanne, you just introduced yourself as your work centering around intuition and how you help people connect to that. So, when in your life did you realize that this was a path or work for you?
At some point, like in the early 2000s, after I had a midlife transformation of my own, I joined a spiritual groups. I was following channelers and things like that, and I had some really cool energetic experiences where I felt the energy of the universe inside of me. And part of it was I just wanted to share that with some other people. And the other thing I noticed is that feeling of personal sovereignty helped me to set boundaries in relationships, to detach myself from old responses, child responses to people being negative and things like that, to take a neutral position. And they just helped me a lot in my whole life. And so I just wanted to share that pathway that I took with other people.
And I think something that's come up in several conversations that I've had with people recently is a thing called unwritten rules. And it sounds like that's what you're referring to, is that we have a tendency to kind of live life by these rules that we didn't set in place. And so you made that switch to going, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. How about I do something different? So what are some practical ways that people can connect in with their intuition?
I like to use a quick, you could call it a meditative sequence, but it's pretty short. And all it requires is to pause, to breathe consciously, then to listen inside of yourself. And very often you'll get a good message. I've got myself an avatar that I can use. The goddess Athena came to visit me. I could envision her and her little owl. And you can play games like that with yourself in your own head that allows you to say, I can rely on me and what I know is true inside of me, instead of relying on what you were calling the rules that you'd been told when you were younger.
So it looks like Jean has a question.
Uh-oh.
I do. Joanne, you were saying about intuition as Jillian was asking you that question. And I'd very much like for you to share with our audience. Did that happen through a recreational way, or was that a connection in a different way? Because so many people think they have to take a substance in order to experience their intuition or get into that spiritual side.
Right. I don't have hardly any experience with psychedelic kinds of substances to be used for, I mean, they can be used for like awesome purposes. I'm not dissing them or anything, but no, my awakening was pretty well a spontaneous response to a whole lot of frustration about things in my life, like relationships and what was my purpose, and a feeling I'd had since a child that there was something more to life,
Hmm.
and it wasn't in the religion I was raised in.
Yeah.
It was inside of me. I had this feeling all the time, and I never felt like I needed any kind of substance. I just needed to be shown how to get there myself through some kind of meditation class or something like that.
Right. Well, that's reassuring because so many people think they have to do something else, something externally, imbibe a
Okay.
substance, whatever, to get there. And I, I'm glad you shared that because I want to help people understand that's not necessary. So
Right. I mean,
thank
and it
you.
does, yeah. And some people prefer that, but it is definitely not necessary as such, at
Yeah.
least in my experience.
Hmm.
So,
So that brings me to a question around when you were talking about listening or pausing and breathing. In a world of full of distractions and demands, and how do we do that pause?
well, for one thing, I'm old, so I get up really early in the morning. And even if you have to go to work later in the day, I think there's a benefit to being in a quiet space, whether it's midnight or it's 5:30 in the morning, and a space that you find comfortable with. That's why I have behind me a sacred altar space that has my tarot cards and other kinds of tools that I use to get in touch with my own intuition. And so I have a special space, and it's all mine, and I set aside special time when I know I'm not going to be disturbed by anybody else. And so I can be in my own world on this planet at the same time.
Interesting. So as you look back on your journey, because you just explained that this is, well, I say recent because 2000s are recent to me because I'm old too. But looking back on your journey, what has been your biggest lesson that helped you to learn to trust yourself, your own intuition?
I always go back to something my grandfather told me a long, long time ago. And that is that everything, absolutely everything, happens for the best in the long run. And I have found that to be true in my life. I had lost a romantic partner when he was 22 years old
Mm.
and went through the grief process. That was all for the best in the long run. I got divorced from my first husband in 2001. That was all for the best for all of us, I have found in the long run.
Mm.
So I'm a really firm believer in that. And I'm basically an optimist by experience and temperament. So it can get very painful. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it seems to always happen for the best in the end.
Yeah. Jean, do you have any follow-up questions?
Oh, I wish I did. I suppose. I suppose, Joanne, one of the things that always has interested me is the fact that, yes, everything happens for the best. And there are so many things in our lives where we can see repetition, we can see a
Right.
pattern, right? So, my question to you is what kinds of patterns for you began to speak first?
That's a really good question. I keep thinking back to the time when I was 7 years old and I saw Jesus in the stained glass dome of my church, and that was an abstract
Hmm.
stained glass dome. So um, I always had a sense that there was more to know than all the grown-ups could tell me.
Okay.
And I can't really explain it as such, but it was just my own experience with
Hmm.
the cosmic, if you will. And I was a really big science fiction fan, and I saw a pattern there where things seemed to work towards a better life for people over the long run, maybe because I focus more on Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek than I did on some of the dystopian science fiction that came later. But there was always a pattern of, yes, we can figure out a way through this. I grew up in the upper middle class, so I didn't have a lot of I had all my basic needs taken care of, let me put it that way. And my parents were cool emotionally, but they had their basic psychological act together. So there was a lot of trauma that I didn't have to deal with. So there was this built-in sort of optimism about life, and that I was strong enough to do things on my own, that I always had.
Well, that's
And that
probably
was the
part of that.
pattern.
Yeah, that's probably part of that pattern, isn't it?
Yeah, the pattern was this optimistic, we will always have options that we can always overcome. And not just out of physical effort per se, but more, we can figure things out. That was what I always grew up with.
Yeah. And when you add your intuition into that, it's even better, isn't it?
Oh, right. Yeah. Because now I have this really, I mean, I used to worry about things. I still do occasionally, but I can fall back on this, on my own knowing, and get a bigger picture of what's going on. And then the emotional regulation kicks in, and that's fine. And then I can move on to whatever solution I want to pursue. But there's a fundamental feeling of not being alone inside of myself. And I used to be a very lonely person when I was much younger.
Right. Back at you.
Yeah.
So you talk about intuition and inner wisdom. Is there a difference between the two?
Very good question. I think intuition is probably relatively neutral. Inner wisdom means that the intuitive hits that you're getting come with a quality of some sort that is better, or coming from a place of more life experience, or I'm not quite sure exactly how else I would describe that. Because you can have an intuition about, oh, that dog over there is going to come and jump on me because you can tell how it's looking, because you can use your senses. It's not just all in your head. If we're paying attention with all of our 5th and 6th and 7th and maybe senses of what's going on around us, we can use that information to help keep us safe, for instance. But I'm talking about a deeper use of intuition to actually know ourselves so well that we automatically know what the next step is that we want to take that's best for us and our overall life in the long term.
Sounds interesting. So I think we touched on earlier about pattern recognition you talk about, and how I think for a lot of people that may come intuitively to them, if I can say that. But for people who maybe aren't consciously looking for patterns, how could they make it more a conscious thing to recognize patterns in their life?
I'm a firm believer in a senses meditation that I think I got from Jean, working with Jean in one of her programs, that you go through. You're going to have your eyes open for part of it because you're going to use your vision, but you don't want to make that the whole thing. I'm trying to remember how we went, you went through all this, but the main thing was you started with one sense. You're in a sort of comfortable space, and you may already have your eyes closed, you may not, but you listen, you feel the in my case, this desk in front of me, or you take a sniff and smell the smells in the room. And in between each one, it's what else? What else are you getting? So that you start fine tuning those senses. So it's not just the coffee that you smell. It's oh, look, there's a silver dollar over there, and I can smell the tang of that metal. It's you could really go pretty far with it, actually. But you just do you just keep asking yourself, what else, what else, what else, and you just fine tune these things, and you'll be aware of all kinds of stuff you never paid attention to. It's just a great sequence. I use it, still use it.
So Jean, that came up backwards for us. Can you read the title on that?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
It's 6 weeks is at the top, and it says 6 senses. What else?
Okay.
So we go through the sight, and then we get to the hearing, what you can hear, and then we go to the sense of smell, the sense of taste, the sense of touch. And we take touch and we separate it out from touch that you can actually touch and what you feel. And then we also go to what you know.
That's right. That was the last bit.
But every time we work on a sense, we ask what else at least 5 or 6 times until you get, well, if I'm working with you, until you get a little upset with me for asking that. And then I say, just one more, right? So yeah, that's how that part of that program works. There's a second part to it as well. But it takes about 6 weeks to really hone all of you. And if you're not using your senses and you're only using your intellect, you're not getting all the information you need to make a really good quality decision.
And I think going back to what we just talked about a little earlier, that sometimes it's the just distractions of the world that we don't take the time, like Joanne was saying, we don't take the time to pause. And you really have to do that in a space that not only do you feel safe, but is not bombarding you with things that are going to distract you from that. And so as you two were talking, one of the things that came up for me was, as we go through life, I think some of the inner wisdom that we have could come from what I call generational knowledge. So it's passed down from family members or from people around us, connections or whatever. What do you think about that, Joanne, in your work? How does that generational knowledge create a pattern as well?
Well, it can create all kinds of patterns that some of which we may consider positive and some negative. As usual, I like to focus on the positive. My father was a very interesting person, very intellectually gifted. He had being somebody who was born in the 1930s, he and my mother had a fairly traditional relationship where my father was the provider and my mother stayed at home with us and volunteered in various community activities. And what surprised me, I'm the oldest child, and what surprised me is that my father was absolutely adamant that I did not need to follow that pathway. I did not need to play the traditional woman's role. Now, my mother majored in 2 foreign languages when she was in college, and she didn't, quote, do anything with it. And she had no problem with that. She got exactly the kind of situation she was looking for. But she was real smart, too. But I saw this traditional relationship, and I was a little surprised that he really wanted me to focus on being independent, especially when I went to college. It was not to go find a husband. You were supposed to study your own thing and do your own thing. And I was a little surprised at that. But that was something that made a huge difference to me. As a matter of fact, it actually backfired on me a number of times because I'm so independent that sometimes it's hard for me to rely on other people when I really need to. But that was one of the things that struck me in my whole lifetime was where my father got that, because he had a totally different relationship when he was growing up and as a young adult himself. But yeah, for him, the mind was everything.
Do you have a follow-up question, Jean?
Well, I'm not sure it's a follow-up. It might be follow-up. It could be just let's go off on a different tangent question.
Okay. Tangents are good.
You use a phrase, Joanne, about paper soul houses.
Yes.
And I'm just really curious about where did that image come from? And what kind of paper walls do you see people living behind?
The Paper Walls. Paper Walls is the title. I don't have it up right now to look at, but is the title of the first poem that I wrote when I had my spiritual awakening and my initial notice from my own intuition that I was not going to stay in the marriage that I was in. So Paper Walls is a declaration of freedom, because I realized that the structure, the relationship structure that I was living in was not made out of concrete or even wood. And I could tear it up, not necessarily the best way to do it, but I could tear it up anytime I wanted to because the walls were made of paper. And there was a beautiful garden outside that I had never had access to. I was isolated from a lot of things because my first husband was quite introverted and we moved around quite a bit. And that was my declaration of independence. And I showed it to a good friend of mine and she said, "You're going to be divorced in about a year." But I took that idea and I said, okay, that doesn't mean you have to go out and get divorced in 5 minutes. That's not the point. The point is, if you really, really believe in the expansiveness of what's inside of you, you can make your outer world look a lot more like your inner world that you want to have. And it's not as hard as you think. The walls are indeed made of paper. And you can decide how you want to take them down. There are lots of different ways to do that are kinder than others. But seeing that possibility means everything. A lot of people feel like they live in boxes that are too small. So
cool.
So I'm going to take that paper that Jean spoke about. I'm going to switch it a little bit here. Because I think a lot of people, and this is men and women, they feel or look successful on paper, but they feel disconnected from themselves. And I think some of that, relies in the work that you do. How do people find ways to reconnect with themselves?
Well, I think one of the main things is to stop. We get so busy. Busy is almost a bad word in my book. I mean, I have my own things I got to get busy with. I understand that. But it's something I'm constantly working on, slowing down the pace. We're going to go back to Jean again as an example, just because that's the way it is. Jean's focus on seasons of the soul, the heart, the body. To not be afraid to slow down and stop. And not just in the summer to go on a vacation that makes you more stressed out than before you left. But it's, I don't want to say it's selfish in a way, but all of this is about taking care of us first.
Yep.
Because then, like the saying is, if you love yourself first, then you have the capacity, or take care of yourself first, you have the capacity to take care of everything else in your life. But it's not just that. We deserve to have peaceful moments And that's why I'm very much in favor of having your own daily rituals that involve this, because that's how you make that alive in your own self and in your world. And you find that it has repercussions all over the place. When I go out to the grocery store, I'm the one that's telling all the stockers, thank you for doing this. I wonder how many other people do that. And I think one of the reasons I think of this is that when I go out shopping, I'm not like, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. I got my list, so I'm cool. And I can take the time to make connections and send my magic out to other people, even in little tiny ways like that. And I tell you what, everything I've ever read and seen, it makes a difference.
Indeed.
Just those little things. So I can give to these people, and it's nothing out of my little container at all. And it makes a difference, not just for me, but for all the souls, because we are all connected to each other. That's the way I look at it.
We are. So if somebody is standing at a crossroad of feeling that, we just talked about seasons and how, seasons come and go, but if they feel like, a season's coming to an end and they're really not quite sure what to do, what would you recommend as a first step?
Actually, talk to me. If you want to be really, really, really clear about it, because we can, and there are other people who do similar things to what I do. I'm not, the only person in the world, but talk to somebody who has found a peaceful place. Because they can share that sense with you. They can share their practices with you. That's how I learned how to do a lot of this stuff, was getting together with people like you, Jillian, and Jean, and others who already have a great practice of a great rhythm in their lives. And I can learn from that. And other people can learn from what I've experienced. That's the way I look at it.
So one of the things, Jean, that Joanne says is that, and I was reading one of the pieces that she had on Substack, and she says, pick a topic and I will find a connection.
Yes.
I'm going to ask Jean to pick a topic and let Joanne can find a connection.
Oh, what fun is this? We're going to play a game. Who knew? I didn't know you were going to play this game, Jillian. Oh, let's find a topic, shall we? Well, the word that comes to mind is convergence.
Ooh.
What can we do with convergence?
What was your question for Joanne?
Well, if somebody picks a topic, Joanne said that she can find a connection.
Okay.
So I think number one is this connected to people, places, things? And we've talked about senses. So is it connected to that? But where's the connection with convergence?
Sorry about that. Motorbike.
That's all right. Humans. There are so many different paths. I'm seeing them in my head. Connections among humans all over the world. We're Homo sapiens. We're all the same, basically. 99.9% of our DNA is the same. The point of convergence is in our stories about ourselves and our communities, and we will find so many things in common because we are, in fact, the same, more than we are different. And I believe very strongly that by finding the peacefulness within ourselves, we can find those convergence points with other humans, and the whole crazy world will be a more loving place.
Yeah, I like what you said about us being more like than we are different, because I think, unfortunately, the media and social media, whatever, tends to highlight the differences
Oh, yeah.
versus the common ground. So even, for example, the three of us, we have very different practices in what we do, but yet we can come together and seek some common ground. So, and that all kind of relates to, I think, personal growth. And how do you make these connections with people, and where does it go from there? And knowing maybe when you walk in a room and have 2 or 3 sentences with somebody, whether this is somebody continued this conversation with, and to find out more about them, and to find out, and there again, I think this comes back to that, what we were just talking about is the patterns.
Yes, yes.
The connections, I think, are patterns. So could you talk to that maybe a little bit more, in how we can build these connections with people to make this a better place to live and thrive?
Oh, I think it starts with one of my favorite activities, which is a conversation. And inside of all the words that reflect the feelings inside of us is a place where we can share our truths, our own truths, intuitive truths, with each other, and find that common ground in different places and different times. And I just think it can grow. We're old enough as a species on this planet to, I was going to say, make things better. Of course, everybody's got their idea of what better is. The words that come to me are peaceful and bright conversations where we share our greatest desires and our biggest imaginings with each other, and then have the freedom to carry some of those out because we've talked to somebody else and they have gone, "Ooh, that's neat." So if you don't want to just be alone with your little altar space and not do anything else. So you made a really good point, Jillian, that the lesson in the end is to take our new, wonderful, peaceful selves and go out and share that with other people, and then it'll spread. And it's good.
Indeed.
Jean, do you have a follow-up?
Well, I
Or a
do.
different direction?
Well, not really. It could be, but I think it does have some relevance to this
Okay.
because, Joanne, you have a background in linguistics and philosophy.
That's correct.
That's correct. So, what I'd like to know is, what did those studies open up in you that later became part of your intuitive world?
Good point. The word is not the thing was one of the most important lessons I learned about language. So the vulgar words and things like that, depending on what they're being used for, do not offend me as such because they're just words. And so I can detach myself from the language and have fun with it. I'm following a couple of etymologists who are studying or who are giving us information about words and phrases and where they came from in history and stuff like that. And I'm just totally geeking out on this series because, I don't know, people have so many different ways
They do.
of saying the same thing and different things. It's just, and the number of languages throughout the world and then the dialects on top of that. And it's just so big. We can tell our stories so many different ways. That's why I love mythologies, because I see the common threads that run through all of them, again, because we are humans. So I think that's one of the reasons I like language so much, is because I like the stories that people make up about how the world was made and who we are and all that. And you also asked about
Philosophy.
I like to take philosophy out of here and put it down here where the heart is. A lot of philosophers like to stay up here, and they'll have little arguments about their philosophy. But the thing I do like about philosophy, besides wanting to bring it down to the heart level, don't forget the emotions that go into a person's I'm trying to think of the right word. A person's set of ethics, for instance, or their belief in how the world or the universe is made. Philosophy covers all of those kinds of spaces in our heads. And I think there's a feeling to it that sometimes the philosophers in the academic world don't really get into. But at the same time, going into the mind and then just using the philosophy to expand it, to think of things in a totally different way, whether you're doing it because you're studying Aristotle at the moment and you see something new that you've never seen before, even though Aristotle was doing it. There's a freedom to it, I guess, is what I would. There's a freedom of the mind to it. We can ponder on all kinds of different tangible and intangible things. And I find that fascinating.
Cool.
So while you were talking about that, one of the things that came to mind is that it sounds like you're very creative with your process. And I think a lot of times people tag creativity just with artists. And yes, there are a lot of art mediums that you can do, but do you think that creativity is important for everybody?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's both tangible and intangible at the same time, all the time. To me, the coolest thing about creativity is what people call the flow. And that is being so absorbed, whether it's in a painting that you're doing or a poem that you're writing or the roses that you're pruning. Again, it goes back to patterns. We all have the capacity to create patterns. And with almost any material that we want to, or with groups of human beings in a circle learning to dance, doesn't matter. It's the ideas that you're flowing in it and you're enjoying it and the rest of the world goes away.
Indeed.
And to me, that's what pure joy is when the rest of the world goes away and you're totally engrossed in whatever it is you're doing.
In your zone.
Yeah, in that zone thing, yeah.
Now, Jelly and I have a question about that because what I have will tie into the creativity bit of it a bit, Joanne.
All right, I'm going to hand it off to Jean then.
Hey, so I know you use the tarot as part of your daily ritual. So tarot can be treated like prediction, although I know you don't do that. It can be treated as entertainment or psychology or symbolism or a spiritual dialogue. What is tarot for you at this stage in your practice?
It takes my intuitive connection, and instead of listening, I can look. I can see the messages from my own self by looking at the cards and knowing from my long practice with them what the different elements in the cards symbolize. And I can look, I hardly ever pull only one card at a time because I really love to see the relationship among like three cards. Well, who's looking at whom? Some guy's sitting on a throne over here and there's a wheel in the middle and somebody's brandishing a sword on the other side. And are they looking at each other? What's the story in those cards that wants to be told to me about the energies floating around my little universe today? And that's basically how I look at it. Or you can do one for an entire year and do a card for every month. I do that on my birthday. And then I keep the cards and I put them in a pile so I can't see the ones that haven't happened yet. And I pull one every month, and then I go to the next one every month to see what the theme is going to be for that month. And it helps guide me in kind of how I approach things, or reminds me of something I need to know that keeps me in my peaceful place.
So tarot is also about archetypes, which can
Oh,
tie into mythologies
right.
and legends. And it also, from what I understand that you do with it, it's a way for you to get better informed.
Yes.
Okay.
It's because I believe that it's giving me the energy forecast, if you will, for the day, the moment, whenever I've set it for. It's not a purely predictive thing. It's just saying, this is what we're dealing with right now. Can you feel it? I can feel it. Then let that help guide you for this particular day. Astrologers do basically the same thing. But I am, as a friend of mine said, the tarot tells a story, you write the ending.
Yes.
As soon as you decide to do something because of that reading, you are changing the situation. And that's the purpose in the first place. So you're not stuck with whatever you think it says.
No one wants to be stuck.
No. And so that's not allowed.
Yeah.
In my world anyway.
Indeed. Anything further, Jillian?
Well, I think that we've kind of hit on a lot of different things today. But for anybody who's listening to or watching our conversation, what's one message or reminder from you that you would like to leave people with around either the work that you do, the connections, the creativity, all of the things that we've talked about today? Was there something that is just like, oh, we didn't go into that as far as you'd like to go, or there's something that we missed that you would like to add?
I think I'd just like to remind folks to really take a pause at some point during the day when things are not going on all around you, and breathe and listen. And if you do that every day, you're going to find that things are going to open up for you that you weren't aware of before.
I can agree with that.
Yeah. And if you've been with us here, you've paused in your day to listen to this, and we appreciate that.
Indeed, we do.
And I'm going to hand this back over to Jean to close us out.
Oh, thank you very much, Jillian. And thank you, Joanne. I hope we
You're
didn't
welcome.
grill you too much.
Nah, like I said, I can talk about almost anything.
There you are. Well, if you are with us and watching or listening, we do appreciate you and we value your time and your energy. I am certain that we have all been so aware that we want to bring to you items of interest. And I hope you have found this conversation interesting and helpful. If you'd like to get in touch, we're going to put all the information in the show notes, and any of us would be delighted if you would want to get in touch. We'd be happy to make that connection with you. And if you have any comments, please do leave them. You can leave them on the YouTube video. I'm not certain if you can leave them on podcast episodes, but
yeah.
If you leave them on YouTube, one of us will definitely get back to you. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Jillian.
You're welcome.
And we will be back with another episode. And Joanne and Jillian get to put me to the fire, feet to the fire. Uh-oh. So we're going to have some fun. But thank you again so much for being here. Bye for now.